Hey guys, welcome back to the Celica project. So last time we were working on the transmission seals as well as a transmission crossmember. And so since that video, I did a couple things. I took the ring gear off of the flex plate, so this came off of the automatic transmission of our LS400 donor. And I transferred it over to our flywheel, so this will make sure that when we swap the manual transmission in, it'll all be compatible. And I also took the entire assembly with the pressure plate, and I got that all balanced at the machinist. So that all should be ready to put together now. So before we get into putting the engine and transmission together and then hopefully into the car, we have a couple things we have to finish up. One of the things is going to be the fuel lines. So the old Celica came with a small inline 4, now we're upgrading to a big V8. So we're gonna have to flow some more fuel. So what I ended up doing is I bought brand new 5/16 hardline and a bunch of fuel fittings, AM fittings here that I listed out. And what I'm going to be doing is bending those new fuel lines into the similar shape as the old fuel lines. I will need to modify them a little bit when they come into the engine bay to bend in the other direction than they were stock, but for the most part, it should be okay to copy what the old fuel lines did. So without further ado, let's get started on the fuel hard lines. So while this time lapse goes, I'm going to explain what we're doing here. The fuel line comes in this big coil, and we're using a fuel line straightener first to straighten it out pretty straight, not perfectly straight. And then what's on the ground is the old fuel line, and we're using that as a template, but then we're using a hand tube bender to basically bend the new fuel line into the same shape. This stuff is actually as tedious as it looks, and it takes a lot of time to get this right. It took me a couple attempts to actually get this first fuel line even done, but basically what you need to do is measure twice and bend once, and it also helps if you have a lot of hands to kind of wrangle the fuel line around like I did. So these final few bends are actually pretty shallow, so we're just gonna basically use our hands to bend it right into shape. And at this point, you can kind of see that the new fuel line is basically matching the old fuel line, and right there we have our finished fuel line. So for this project, I made two fuel lines, both the return and the sender. This fuel line actually gave me a lot of trouble, and I didn't learn from my mistakes on the first one. It was getting pretty late at night, and I was getting really impatient with the fuel line, so I just kept bending it without even measuring, and I did suffer the consequences and had to redo it multiple times. I do want to note that you're strictly not required to do the return line in this case. I think it's pretty low pressure, so you can get away with it. But I wanted to do both of them just so that they're both uniform and basically have nicer fuel lines. So to add the fuel filter, I added some weld nuts to this plate in the back of the car and took the original LS400 mount and then mounted the fuel filter there. And then I had to redo some of the bends in the lines to make sure that they connected with the fuel filter. And here are the fuel lines installed throughout the car. Basically, they just slot into the original spots. So with the hard lines in, we were working on the soft lines now. So this is the original soft line. So this goes in from the hard fuel line at the back of the engine into the fuel pump on this side. And basically, I have recreated it with these nice soft AM lines, and they look way more fancy and clean and professional, and they'll also be pretty much guaranteed to hold the pressure of the new fuel pump. So pretty excited to install these. So after these are in, we have to do the same thing on the front, and then after that the fuel system should be complete besides reworking the fuel pump. For the fuel pump, I have at the top the original Celica fuel pump, and at the bottom is the LS400. I still have a little bit to figure out on how to adapt the new bigger fuel pump into the old hanger, and so I'll cover that next video, but for now we're going to go on to assembling the trans and engine. So first look at the new V8 we're going to be putting into Celica. So one additional thing we have to do before
installing the transmission is putting in a new pilot bearing. So this kit I bought comes with a new pilot bearing as well as this spacer, and I've been putting this spacer in my freezer for the past pretty much past day. So hopefully we can tap this in and put our new pilot bearing in. Awesome. And so double tap this to make sure. But I'm pretty sure that this pilot bearing is now seated all the way into on top of that spacer that we installed. And then the kit also comes with this little machined aluminum piece, and that just sits right inside of the pilot bearing. Oh, such a good fit that there's some suction. So that's it for this part. So now we should be able to install our transmission and flywheel here.
So here's the flywheel installed, and then right after that I installed the clutch using a 3D printed clutch alignment tool, and then I went ahead and put the pressure plate on, and so here's the whole entire assembly all ready for the transmission. So I forgot to film the most important part, but basically had a bunch of friends over and we were able to slap the engine and transmission together, and finally it's sitting in the car. I have to make a couple more adjustments and I'll talk about what I did in the next video to make it all fit, but that's it for now and thanks for watching.